Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hopefully you can hear the wonderful waves in the background. Now they stop. There they go. So we're at a place called Windmill Point, which is in Virginia, in an area called the Northern Neck along the Chesapeake Bay, and this is where I grew up as a child. I spent most of my childhood years until around the age of 12 here in this area along the Chesapeake Bay, and this kind of, I guess you could say it's like a fishing area, seafront. But here we are, back after so many years, wondering where has that small boy gone? Now, the body changes in so many ways, but still something remains the same, that spirit soul. So here we are, back as spirit souls now to read from the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we've just been chanting our rounds here as the sun kind of rose, and now the sun is risen, beaming in our eyes. So so we'll do some reading. Any thoughts?
Not at all.
Okay, so where are we reading from?
Canto 3, Chapter 21. Kapila's instructions on the execution of devotional service.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Text 1. The personality of Godhead said, "My dear mother, O daughter of the king, now I shall explain to you the system of yoga, the object of which is to concentrate the mind. By practicing this system, one can become joyful and progressively advance towards the path of the absolute truth." The yoga process explained by Lord Kapila Devi in this chapter is authorized and standard, and therefore these instructions should be followed very carefully. To begin, the Lord says that by yoga practice, one can make progress towards understanding the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the previous chapter, it has been clearly stated that the desired result of yoga is not to achieve some wonderful mystic power. One should not be at all attracted by such mystic power, but should attain progressive realization on the path of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, which states in the last verse of the 6th chapter that the greatest yogi is he who constantly thinks of Krishna within himself, or he who is Krishna conscious.
Thoughts?
Yeah, it's just Prabhupada saying it has been clearly stated that the desired result of yoga is not to achieve some wonderful mystic power. I was just like, where we are, it's like, I mean, it's the middle of nowhere. There's no like modern civilization that I know of. And like, you know, people are just stuck in time, certain type of people and everything. But when we were just driving yesterday into what they call the town, there was a little yoga and Pilates hut. You know, and you think, gosh, you know, even like here, which I assure you is just like, yeah, I was impressed, you know, like that's pretty progressive. But yeah, even, you know, I don't know why I said that, just because of the word yoga. Anyway, it's progressive. So while Prabhupada here says, okay, it's not to the desired result of yoga, as we understand Bhakti Yoga, to connect with the Lord through devotion, but even to just do that, that's what I was thinking, even to just engage in an activity that isn't just, you know, I'll go out drinking, I'll go out this, I'll go out that. You've been breathing, you're concentrating, you're focusing, that in itself is a step on a certain ladder, you know, of refinement, of progression in a certain way.
Yeah, it's very nice. I think it's a nice verse. Excuse me. I think it's a nice verse to kind of open up the whole conversation around the principles of yoga, and as a kind of introduction to yoga. But as we know, at the end of the last chapter, Lord Kapila Dev was really clearly making it a point that our goal is not to develop mystic cities from yoga, but actually to come to a point of loving devotional service to the Lord. So, yeah. And here again, Prabhupada quotes the last verse of the 6th chapter. I think it's 647. Yogi nam api sarvesham margatenanta atmanaha shraddhavan bhajate omam samayutatamo mataha. That of all the yogis, the highest is one who always abides in me and worships me with all his heart. So this is the real yogi. This is the kind of yogi we want to become. So not one who's just looking for getting some mystic cities. Should we read on? Okay. Excuse me. It is stated here that by following the system of yoga, one can become joyful. Lord Kapila, the personality of Godhead, who is the highest authority on yoga, here explains the yoga system known as Ashtanga Yoga, which comprises 8 different practices, namely Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. By all these stages of practice, one must realize Lord Vishnu, who is the target of all yoga. There are so-called yoga practices in which one concentrates the mind on voidness or on the impersonal. But this is not approved by the authorized yoga system as explained by Kapila Dev. Even Patanjali explains that the target of all yoga is Vishnu. Ashtanga Yoga is therefore part of Vaishnava practice because its ultimate goal is realization of Vishnu. The achievement of success in yoga is not an acquisition of mystic power, which is condemned in the previous chapter, but rather freedom from all material designations and situation in one's constitutional position. This is the ultimate achievement in yoga practice. So I think it's a really important point to hear and understand that actually Ashtanga Yoga is a natural part of our Vaishnava practice. The point is that if Ashtanga Yoga, well, 2 points really. One is that we have to make sure that the point and goal of the Ashtanga Yoga practice is to develop that loving relationship with Krishna. The second point being that, yeah, it's not just meant for like kind of daily exercise, although that can be also very beneficial. Yeah, we have to be careful not to become absorbed in just being bodily conscious. But the whole Ashtanga Yoga practice is part of our Vaishnava culture. And Prabhupada quotes Patanjali here. Yeah, so like that.
Okay. Text 2. One should execute his prescribed duties to the best of his ability and avoid performing duties not allotted to him. One should be satisfied with as much gain as he achieves by the grace of the Lord, and one should worship the lotus feet of a spiritual master. In this verse there are many important words which could be very elaborately explained, but we shall briefly discuss the important aspects of each. The final statement is Atmavik Charana Chanam.
Charana Chanam. Yeah, Charana Chanam. Yeah, sorry.
Atmavik means a self-realized soul or bona fide spiritual master. Unless one is self-realized and knows what his relationship is with the super soul, he cannot be a bona fide spiritual master. Here it is recommended that one should seek out a bona fide spiritual master and surrender unto him Archanam. For by inquiring from and worshipping him, one can learn spiritual activities. Very important to know why we're taking initiation and why we should have a spiritual master, and not rush into it, and not feel pressured by others as well, and pressured by our own mind almost, why am I not initiated? I've been around for 6 weeks. So it's a lifetime commitment. Lifetimes commitment.
I thought this was a nice simplified explanation of our our Vaishnava system. One should execute your prescribed duties to the best of your ability. You should try to avoid performing duties that are not allotted to you. We have to be satisfied with as much gain as we achieve by the grace of the Lord, and we should worship the lotus feet of the spiritual master. I just felt like it's so simple, Just do what you do to the best of your ability. I think that's really powerful and important. It's not that we do what we do and it's not really devotional service. It's like, let's do it half-heartedly. No, do what you do to the best of your ability. Why? Because Krishna is the ability in man. And avoid performing duties that are not allotted to you. Like Arjuna. He wanted to go to the forest, and Krishna said, that's not your allotted duty, that's not your dharma, that's not your situation. So don't do that. Do what you're supposed to do. Stay on the battlefield and fight. That's what you're trained for. That's what your nature is. So we should be careful not to get involved in doing things that aren't really our nature. And although for the most part nature stays the same throughout our life, but our prescribed duties will change according to, as we change through our ashrams also. So the duties of a brahmachari will be different from the duties of a grihastha, different from a vanaprastha and sannyasi. But the nature may stay similar, but how we apply them may be different. Be satisfied with as much gain as comes. Now this is a real difficult one because the general propensity is to be or greedy and always want more and always want more. But but we're satisfied because what we've achieved has come by the grace of the Lord. And of course the last part which you were mentioning is that we have to worship the lotus feet of the spiritual master. We have to be getting guidance. Now it says the spiritual master, but this also can mean the spiritual masters, because there are diksha gurus, shiksha gurus, and there are persons that give us guidance and stuff. So we should worship those people who give us good guidance like that. Okay, so I'll read. The first recommendation is swadharmacharanam. Swadharmacharanam. As long as we have this material body, there are various duties prescribed for us. Such duties are divided by a system of 4 social orders: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. These particular duties are mentioned in the Shastra, and particularly in Bhagavad Gita. Swadharmacharanam means that one must discharge the prescribed duties of his particular division of society faithfully and to the best of his ability. One should not accept another's duty. If one is born in a particular society or community, he should perform the prescribed duties for that particular division. If, however, one is fortunate enough to transcend the designation of birth in a particular society or community by being elevated to the standard of spiritual identity, then his swadharma or duty is solely that of serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyway, I just want to stop there for a second, because as I was reading that, I was just thinking, of course, I haven't transcended anything, but the fact that, I guess where I come from, living in this environment and place, and where I wound up being is definitely quite amazing, and it's certainly the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and the devotees, and my spiritual master, that you can come from such a in one sense degraded society. I mean, but you live here, and what can you do if you're born in the Arctic? you know, what can you do? You've got to eat what you can eat to live, and if you live here, then you eat what you can eat, and you know, people do what they can do. Now, we know there are always alternatives, but those come with knowledge. But when you're born into the darkness of ignorance, you conduct yourself in that space. So anyway, the actual duty of one who is advanced in Krishna consciousness is to serve the Lord. As long as one remains in the bodily concept of life, he may act according to the duties of social convention. But if one is elevated to the spiritual platform, he must simply serve the Supreme Lord. That is the real execution of Swadharma. And these two terms are given in the Bhagavad Gita. I can't remember the verse now, but it talks about Dharma and Swadharma. And generally, Swadharma means our eternal occupation as the eternal servant of Krishna. And Dharma means that bodily designation that we may have here. So I'm in a man's body, and my inclination is to be Kshatriya, Brahmin, Vaishya, Shudra, like that. And then, of course, I have the particular ashram, as I mentioned. So the application of our dharma or conditioning will be distinct and different according to that.
Okay, text 3. One should cease performing conventional religious practices and should be attracted to those which lead to salvation. One should eat very frugally and should always remain secluded so that he can achieve the highest perfection of life. Purport. It is recommended herein that religious practice for economic development or the satisfaction of sense desires should be avoided. Religious practices should be executed only to gain freedom from the clutches of material nature. It is stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam that the topmost religious practice is that by which one can attain to the transcendental devotional service of the Lord, without reason or cause. Such religious practice is never hampered by any impediments, and by its performance one actually becomes satisfied. Here this is recommended as moksha dharma, religious practice for salvation or transcendence of the clutches of material contamination. Generally, people execute religious practices for economic development or sense gratification, and that is not recommended for one who wants to enhance in yoga. So you have to control the senses when we're practicing, I get any form of yoga really, because otherwise it defeats the purpose, because the mind says do this. Oh, what's that?
Your favorite little ladybird.
Ugh.
Did it come back on me somewhere?
No.
I think it did.
No, it didn't. It went past you.
Okay. I mean, I'm okay with them, but
It's gross.
It's not gross. They're beautiful little bugs.
I know. It's gross. But anyway. Yeah, we got to control the senses. Bye.
That's just...
Anyway, let's read the next paragraph because it elaborates on what I thought it would elaborate in the first paragraph, but it didn't.
Okay. The next important phase is mita medyadanam, which means that one should eat very frugally. Interesting. It is recommended in Vedic literatures that a yogi eat only half what he desires according to his hunger. If one is so hungry that he could devour 1 pound of foodstuffs, anyone out there can relate, then instead of eating 1 pound, he should consume only half a pound. And supplement this with 4 ounces of water.
Jeepers.
There you go. 1/4 of the stomach should be left empty for the passage of air in the stomach. If one eats in this manner, he will avoid indigestion and disease. The yogi should eat in this way as recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam and all other standard scriptures. The yogi should live in a secluded place where his yoga practice will not be disturbed.
Wow. I guess what is 1 pound for one person is different for another.
The point being, though, that whatever is your desire, like I could eat until, starting in the morning and all the way until the night, then one should eat half that, you know.
Just until morning till like
midday,
1 o'clock.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the point is that you supplement it so you feel full because you add water. Now, of course, generally, Ayurvedically, you don't drink while you eat. But I've heard this times before that, you know, you eat half as much, you kind of fill it up almost a quarter with water, and then you leave air to circulate so that it can actually digest and break down. So this is the process. So this is the diet of a yogi. And then the last part, yogi should live in a secluded place where his yoga practice will not be disturbed, which is an interesting point. And I was speaking with my very good friend the other day and talking about how the Brahmins generally live outside of the village. They don't live in the village, they live on the outskirts, so that they don't get caught up in the, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu calls it, the Gramya Katha. They don't get caught up in all the daily gossip and nonsense that goes on in the village. And they kind of, when they are involved, then they're always trying to bring everyone up to a higher level of spiritual practice. So it seems this is a similar sort of thing, you know, that we should cease performing conventional religious practice and be attracted by those which lead to salvation, eat frugally, and remain in a secluded place. So secluded place also means in the association of devotees. It doesn't mean necessarily find a tree and climb it or live under one or in a cave, although you can do that, but usually our mission is Sankirtan, which means we come together. So in the association of devotees. But for some people that can be very difficult also.
And also difficult to eat frugally.
Yeah. Okay, so should we finish there?
Yeah.
So it's we thank you very much for your ongoing attention.
Yeah.
We've been traveling quite a bit, and unfortunately our desire is to read regularly, daily, but we've skipped a few days just because of being hither and thither. But we're going to try to improve on that, and we'll hopefully catch you in more places, more times to hear and chant together the Srimad Bhagavatam. Harimo, Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.